Good afternoon, everybody. This is Laura Lee Solomon coming to you with Charting Your Course. And I'm talking to you this evening because situations have emerged. Andrew has people coming in to build a studio in his house. Debbie is visiting with a crystal skull. And Kathy has thought too much about spiders of late and drawn one into her life experience in an unfortunate way. So everyone is essentially busy. Therefore, since this is a teaching show, I very much get to take the stage at Andrew's request, and I want you to know something about who I am and what I do. My own radio show is not Adventures in Reality, though I produce it. I work with Paths of the Great Adventure, which airs in what is normally the roundtable time slot of 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern Time in the United States, Saturday morning. Across the United States, that's the same hours you'll generally hear Coast to Coast on, except they're every night. So I have some competition, surely. I am a student of the Western occult tradition. I am not a psychic such as Andrew Bartzis is, and he's rather an extraordinary psychic, and so is Kathy Ma. Their associate, Debbie Smart, is someone who has been a hypnotherapist and a student of the mind for quite some time. And that's all very well and good, but I always worry about the folks who don't have the spiritual perceptions. That doesn't mean they're subhuman. It just means they haven't opened up that sphere of experience yet in their very human mechanism, which is the same as your very human mechanism. The Western occult tradition starts at the very beginning with someone who is curious and is driven to study and find out what's going on with this spirituality stuff, but doesn't necessarily feel the energy. They don't necessarily have what they recognize as working inner guidance. They don't feel psychic, and they don't know what to do. And the idea of consulting someone who is psychic makes sense to them because this is a person with perceptions that they lack. In the Western occult tradition, we're not about consulting others, but consulting ourselves and standing at the center of our own being, because we've learned how to do that. It isn't something that comes naturally to most people. But we do have a guided method of getting into the center and opening up the perception. So ultimately, you become your own psychic. You become your own counselor. And you learn how to accept and apply the inner guidance in your life. And all of a sudden, you know what you are, you know where you're going, and you know why you're doing it. It's a most remarkable path. But it's intensely practical, and it recognizes that the welfare of humanity as a whole depends on the well-being of each and every one amongst all the billions of human beings on this planet. The world is good to live in. It was created by the Lord God, who looked at each phase of creation as it is unfolding and said he found it good. The world is a good place to live, but knowledge of the forces, laws, and methods which make any one of us a better and more serviceable human being in the social order makes all of humanity work in a more efficient, more spiritually enlightened way. Spirituality begins with the individual. It isn't something that can be legislated. You cannot have somebody come in and force religion down everyone's throat and say, poof, now you're enlightened. No. It starts with individuals, and as individuals emerge into the spiritual reality, their condition of mind and heart becomes contagious. The Heart Math Institute discusses this. The heart, as the center of your being, creates the largest magnetic field that's available in your whole organism. And it is capable of synchronizing with others. But it works best at that if you are not in a state of fear. Well, okay, when people are in a state of fear and they're all together on it and their hearts are coordinated on it, we call that a mob. It happens by nature. But if you've got a group of people who are heart-centered, standing in their sovereign I am self, that too is as contagious as the fear and anger of a mob is in its own way. Because the subconscious is one thing, and we all have our little inlet of it, like a bay of the ocean, but it's one ocean. We are all connected in a unity. And where we start in the Western occult tradition is generally in practical methods of helping people to get their hands on the controls of their lives. Unconsciously, you're already doing it. You're already creating your life experience with your thoughts and feelings and actions. But most people, most average man in the street people, are not really conscious of what it is they are doing and how they are doing it. It's like you learn to walk at some point, and then that set of skills sort of fell into the subconscious, and you're walking along and running and doing various other physical feats, but you don't have to think about it because it's just an acquired skill. And if you want to improve it, as top athletes do when they're trying to get their running speed a little faster, they have to break it down and become very, very self-conscious about every aspect of their performance. And this is kind of where we're starting with your ordinary type of consciousness. We start where you're at and we pose a question. The question is not a very lofty question. It isn't necessarily about any ultimate goals. It's meant to impact everyone right where they stand in their boots on the ground right now. What do you want? As a student of an order called Builders of the Adytum, BOTA for short, I found this question posed in the very first lesson that I encountered. And a lot of people want to answer it in a very lofty way. I want spiritual illumination. I want cosmic consciousness. But that's not what it's about. It's about the practical reality of how you create your experience. And while you're thinking about that question, what you want, because it's really something that needs to be page one of anybody's journal. What do I want right now? What am I working towards? What am I building for? What is my direction here? And from there you go forward and you're taking logical steps, presumably, and your journal is a documentation of that, both the inner practices that you are engaging to help you create those circumstances and the circumstances you're striving to create. So the question is a profound one. And everyone within the sound of my voice should definitely be paying a little attention to that question right now. Where you are now, what do you want? What is your need? And the idea in asking this question is that provided that your desire is in accordance with the laws of life and justice, you can be whatever you want to be, do whatever you want to do, and have whatever you want to have. And you can do it legally, morally, and ethically. But here is the thing. This verb want. We need to get it to the point where it's not expressing an idea of lack, but an imperiousness of craving. You have to be in the place not of need, but of desire. Desire is the heart, the core of manifestation. And if desire is operational, you've got the basic orientation together to do the thing you desire to do. A real want heads you in the right direction. It regulates the exercise of all of your powers and the expenditure of all of your energy. It brings your life into harmony with the universal order. It prepares you for success, because the literal meaning of success is getting things and events to follow one another in the correct sequence. So what do you do once you decide you know what you want? In coming to the place of being a practical creator, you have to realize that you're working with the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is a very primitive part of your mind in many ways. It is actually coupled to the whole realm of nature. Everything below the self-conscious awareness of man is part of the subconscious field, the one life, without exception. And your personal self-consciousness, as guided by your self-conscious awareness, is the mistress of those forces. It is the power that has built and regulates the operation of your body, which is its first and chiefest manifestation close to you. So you need to make the subconsciousness your friend. And you do this by speaking with it. But you have to realize that the subconscious is a pre-linguistic entity. It doesn't speak in words. The subconscious speaks in pictures. And this is a profound point. If you're going to talk to the subconsciousness, you need to speak in imagery. The powers that be in this world, the secular and economic powers, certainly have recognized this for a long time, and they do a thing called engineering of consensus. They make up your mind for you on everything by showing you pictures on the television set primarily. This has been the primary method of doing it for, 3 generations now, 4. It's slowly shifting to the internet, but we still watch those videos. Showing your subconscious pictures is how it happens. And in the Western occult tradition, we have a picture technology that we use to create right states of mind that function in accordance with universal structure. Because the more attuned you are to the universal structure, the more access you have to the universal sources of power. What Wayne Dyer called this was aligning with intention, capital I, intention. And what he meant by that was aligning yourself with what the universe is trying to accomplish at any particular place in space and time. And some of it will be accomplished through you and those around you. Everybody has a part to play, and that part is part of their own unique creation. God works through all hands at once. Everybody's hands are the hands of the divine. And every place you stand, this is sacred ground. I suppose that's why some people criticize occultism with having dispensed with the idea of sin. And that's sort of true. We have. There really isn't anything as anything real in the idea of eternal damnation. But sin itself is an archery term, my friends, and it means you miss the mark. And what do you do about that is, if you are an archer, you try again. And this is what we do as occultists, too. If our aim fails of the objective, striking the target, you simply pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and try again. You don't listen to your detractors telling you how wrong and immoral and messed up you are. You don't buy into the fear and loss scenarios. You pick yourself up and try again, refining your approach each time. So, have we dispensed with a sense of sin? Well, to some extent. To some extent. But refinement always produces results that tend toward the moral, because everybody's part is for the advancement of the whole. In a very real sense, every occult order, every genuine occult order, not something that is someone's cult of personality, but every genuine occult order is about promoting the welfare of humanity. And it does it first by looking at the units, the persons of which humanity is composed. Selfish personalities make their unhappy contribution to selfish social structures. Chaotic thinking and immature emotions affect the mental and emotional levels of all humanity. We do not live unto ourselves alone. To the degree that you can become a more effective part of humanity, to that degree you are making your contribution to saving the world. And you're bringing spiritual powers into action for yourself is bringing those spiritual powers into action for all humanity and preparing yourself to serve life in ever greater measure. So in answering the question, what do you want? It is preferable to start with your actual needs. What do you need right now? What do you work for? What are you about? What is the next step you're striving for in whatever you're engaged in? And to realize that we need to work with pictures to get there. The pictures we use in the Western occult tradition to align ourselves with universal intention are the tarot. The keys of the tarot form a book. The etudes of Thoth, they've been called. Although what we work with in BOTA, the Builders of the Adytum, is not the Thoth Tarot deck. That was a development by one Aleister Crowley, whose specialty was sex magic, and he was almost universally recognized as a black magician. We use a different form of the tarot, and if anybody wants a look at it, it can be found and posted right now at the top of my Facebook page. I am Laura Lee Solomon. Look me up on Facebook if you are, and there you will get a glimpse of a thing called the Tarot Tableau. This is a spread of the 22 keys of the major trump of tarot. And it is the deck that was drawn by Paul Foster Case, well, designed by Paul Foster Case and drawn by an associate of his. And she was rather influenced by the Waite deck, but the symbology here is a little different in some respects. Paul Foster Case had unpublished versions of the tarot to work with. And he had seen some very advanced versions, also unpublished, in the hands of people whose particular developmental work in tarot will never be published. Not for some time, at any rate. But the 22 trumps of the BOTA deck are laid out in the tableau, such as that key 0, the Fool, stands by itself on the first row. And after that, another row is formed of Cards 1 through 7, we call them keys. They are the keys to the universe, and that's why they get called that. Keys 1 through 7 form the first row of the tableau. And as that first row, their specific attribute is that these are dominant mental states or principles. Key 1, the magician. Key 2, the high priestess. Key 3, the empress. Key 4, the emperor. Key 5, the hierophant. 6, the lovers. And 7, the chariot. All symbolize dominant mental states or principles. In the second row, we have cards 8 through 14. 8 is strength. 9 is the hermit. 10, the wheel of fortune. 11, Libra, actually the sign of Libra. Gosh, I'm not pulling up the name of it. I'll have to look at the picture myself. Justice. Then key 12, the hanged man. Key 13, death. And key 14, temperance is its title. This second row, these are all conditions or phenomena, well, activities, let's say, or agencies. They are the means by which things develop. Because they're in the middle, they might be regarded as a term that is the mean or an average, but what they are is they typify activities that give rise to a result. And finally, the last row, 15 through 21. We have key 15, the devil. Key 16, the tower. Key 17, the star. Key 18. Key 18 is the moon. Key 19 is the sun. 20 is judgment, as in the last judgment. And key 21 is the world. These particular picture images hook into a vast network of associations. They are associated with signs of the zodiac. They're associated with the astrological planets. They are associated with letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And as such, they are associated with part of the way we structure space and time about ourselves. They are associated with paths on the tree of life. And the tree of life, well, many of you are familiar with the flower of life glyph of the overlapping circles. The flower of life has been known and depicted in surprising places since very ancient times. Sometimes carved there with technologies we still aren't quite sure how they did that. But in any case, the overlapping circles of the flower of life, if you take the vertical ones in the middle and you choose 4 overlapping circles, the 4 overlapping circles are the geometrical basis of the actual tree of life glyph as it is used in Kabbalah. Kabbalah, along with tarot, are one of the 4 branches of the Western occult tradition. Tarot, Kabbalah, astrology, and alchemy, all closely related. On my own show, we're working with the ideas of a glyph called the cube of space, astrology, and the science of alchemy to work the business of personal transformation. But here, we're just trying to get a general overview going of this technology that we have and use. Once you have clearly decided what it is you want in your life, what you want in this case to be or do or have in practical terms, bear in mind that it needs to be something that you can think about in terms of imagery. What would that look like? And we want you to imagine what it would look like in detail. What would you feel like undergoing that experience or having that or living that life? What does that feel like? What does it smell like? What are its textures? What colors are there? What are the images? And you need to think about the images. And you need to think about how this is where you want to go. This is what your focus is. This is your choice in life. This is your next step, whatever it is. And desire it ardently. And say to yourself frequently, preferably when your mind is in a suggestible state, such as just when you're waking up in the morning or just when you're going to sleep at night, I will apply all of my powers to achieve this aim. We'll be back. We are back, and before we go any further afield, I'd like to point out to you that this show slot really does belong to Andrew Bartzi's, Kathy Ma, and Debbie Smart. And Andrew, who is a wonderful psychic, is offering a free video series called Living the Mystical Life Daily. Living the Mystical Life Daily. That's such a good idea. And in this regard, he has some free videos online. I think a free video series of that title, yes, Living the Mystical Life Daily. He shows you tools and gives you knowledge about how to have mystical experiences in your everyday life, which, once you're ready, these things will open up to you. Sign up for free at andrewbartzis.com. You put in your name and email, and you'll have access to 2 free videos and further information about an upcoming event he's planning, also of that title, Living the Mystical Life Daily. It's scheduled for the 3rd and 4th of September in Seattle, Washington. So check out andrewbartzis.com. And remember, you're listening to this on Revolution Radio. It's all about a revolution in consciousness here. And despite the egregious content of the bumper music during the break, it really is about independence. And independence really comes about through focusing in your inmost being and building the life you want. And as part of that, particularly if you've ever been around the New Thought folks, you will realize that in order to move forward, sometimes you have to put effort into things. So we'd like to encourage you to participate in Revolution Radio, to put your energy into this organization at some level, more than just hanging out in the chat room and carrying on with the other station groupies. You know who you are. But taking part in maybe some of the work. There are occasional volunteer opportunities that open up. That's how I got started here. But also there's economic participation. Join the archives, for example, for $4.95 a month. The archives are a wonderful way to get access to all the shows that air on Revolution Radio. Not all of them are of interest to everyone, but it's a really good resource if you are interested in some of it. To do that, you go to the Archives tab, scroll to the bottom, and there you'll find where you sign up for the archives. Now to get back to our work at hand, once you have an aim in mind that expresses what you want to do and create in your life, the next step really does put some people back a pace. because the visualization and create your reality schools of thought like to leave this step out. They do. You're just supposed to sit back and visualize. Actually, that isn't what happens. What happens is you focus on your aim at specific times when your mind is suggestible. Morning, night, a specific time of meditation when you're relaxed and you get to feel most connected with the divine. Then think about what it is you want to be and do and create in your life. Creation is always a wonderful thing to do because that's what we're about as human beings. We are the creative agents of the Most High God. That's a big job. And if you're not doing anything creative, if you're just getting up and going to work, that's a problem. And you will feel it in your life. You will feel it in terms of being subject to fears, lack and limitation, frustration and anger. And as society gets what seems to be more and more repressive, you will feel more and more put upon and reactive. And this is exactly the direction that you don't want to go. And you feel all these things because you're not doing something with your life. The welfare of not only you, but humanity as a whole depends on the well-being and the psychological and psychic spiritual health of the individuals that make up society. This is fundamental. So there really is a vast importance associated with getting yourself in hand and aligning yourself with universal intention and creating something. No matter how far off the fulfillment of your aim may seem, you have turned your face in the right direction by establishing what it is you want to be and do with yourself. And don't start in that it's too late at your age, because it isn't. The only life truly wasted is the one that never gets up and does anything constructive, anything creative. Most normal people have been living in that rut for 2 or 3 generations now. They never make this beginning. They have no dominant purpose, no planned procedure, no particular destination. And because they want to take what they are dished, they get dished whatever they will take. They never get anywhere when they might be able to achieve a credible success if only they would decide on somewhere to go, on something to be, besides average. So once you decide, you have made a first step. But mere aspiration will not take you to your chosen goal. Mere imagery does not take you to your chosen goal. There must also be the element of activity, personal activity. Concerning this need for personal activity, Paul Case in his writing gives us a pep talk by Eliphas Levi. The occultist who wrote as Eliphas Levi, his actual name was Alphonse Louis Constant, very French, very much an adept also. And he wrote this, which is the Eliphas Levi pep talk. Every intention which does not assert itself by deeds is vain intention, and the speech which expresses it is idle speech. It is action which proves life and establishes will. Hence it is said in the sacred and symbolical books that men will be judged not according to their thoughts and ideas, but according to their works. We must act in order to be. In order to do a thing, we must believe in the possibility of our doing, and this faith must be forthwith translated into acts. When a child says, "I cannot," his mother answers, "Try." Faith does not even try. It begins with the certitude of completing, and proceeds calmly as if omnipotence were at its disposal and eternity before it. Dare to formulate your desires and then set to work at once, and do not cease acting after the same manner and for the same end. What you want shall come to pass, and by you and for you it is indeed already begun. Just for the sake of knowing what you want and being willing to act should any opportunity arise. You see, this is the other little thing that doesn't generally get mentioned in discussions of the secret of creating, manifesting. And this is that you have to keep your eyes open once you have formulated your desire on the world around you, because there is where you will see the impacts of your desire as it is expressed by means of the subconscious in events and conditions around you. So you have to be alert. You have to be present to your life and not escaping into fantasy land or sitting in front of the TV or lost in a romance novel or wherever you go for refuge. You have to be here now, grounded, present, aware, and paying attention. Because in that act, you can see when the door of opportunity opens somewhere. If you are paying attention, you manage to get the hint from the outer world. This used to be called reading the signs, omens, and then it's considered a superstition. But if you are doing mystical work, then you have to realize that from the center of your being, where your desire is seated in your heart, what you want projects your experience outward. Some way or other will open. And you have to be willing to proceed along that path, to take a step in that direction, maybe 2 steps. Maybe a volunteer opportunity comes up somewhere that is willing to teach people to do certain things. That's how I got started doing the life I'd like to do. And I know it's going to develop from there because I have other objectives than that in mind as well. But whatever opportunity opens to you, you take that step. And then you figure out what the next step is going to be. And you proceed to build in the direction of your walk. And the cycle of it goes inner and outer, and then back to inner, and then outer again. And it keeps on cycling one step at a time. And one step at a time, you walk from the world you live in onto a completely different timeline with a completely different life experience around you. And you look back a year from now on the experiences that you've been through, and you can see how your life has changed if you do the work and are paying attention. This is one of the reasons Andrew says that if you are doing this work and you are not journaling, you are faking it. Because if you are journaling, you are writing down what each of these steps are, how it cycles between your inner and outer world, and you're paying attention to developments in the outer world for your next step. Not to govern what will happen, but because you started by planting a seed in subconsciousness with your imagery. And subconsciousness all around you responds by creating, by opening something, by making something possible. And you move in the direction of your dreams. That's how it works. That is how you create a different life than the one you're living right now. But bear in mind that speech itself is sometimes not useful to your objectives. This is because the minute you say, I am going to do X, whatever X is, or I am going to be Y, whatever Y is. And this happened to me when I was a very young person, just preparing to graduate from high school. I had notions of what I wanted to do and be, and I didn't have the guidance of this technology. So when 15 people stood up around me and said to me that I did not have the means or the talent to do that, I kind of bought into it. And I wound up flipping burgers, like most kids do. And it stayed stuck there. And I didn't know why. Well, why is because I didn't have that guiding light of structure to show me how the thing worked. As you build the imagery of your desires, thinking about it and feeling it during set periods of time, that's all very well and good, but don't bleed the energy off by telling everyone about it. Don't give them the opportunity to bleed energy off from you and your creative process, because I swear they will. I've encountered this just recently, God help me, on Facebook, where there's a group where I post my shows, after they've aired. I take the link and I put it together with the imagery that I used in the show's banner, and I put it up. And I swear this one woman emerged from the crowd. I'm not going to say her name, but bless her heart, all she can do is say it's plagiarism and say, like, I haven't credited the sources on my illustrations and blah, blah, blah. And it's on the same page with 15 other people or more. I don't know how many members there are in that group offhand, hundreds at least. And everybody's posting, and they're posting stuff in a picture, and they're not saying where they got the picture from. But me, I'm the one who's the plagiarist, right? Okay. So am I going to let her bother me? Well, I did for a while this morning, and then I wrote her a letter and said, you seem to enjoy being a critic. So let's make your criticism a little more detailed, and maybe you will help improve the quality of what I do. I know she's not going to take me up on that. But right now, her thing is attack. And people who are attacking you are usually folks who are unhappy because they aren't doing it. Because they've put energy into something and they haven't done anything more with it than that. They haven't talked about it to anyone. They haven't developed anything, and they're unhappy about it. And then here you come bursting into their field of awareness, and you're doing this, whatever it is. And they're jealous. They're unhappy, and you have yanked their chain. And it's a symptom of theirs, not necessarily that you have done anything so wrong or obnoxious or horrible. By the same token, stuff happens around you all the time that bothers you as well. And here we get into the meat of what alchemy is about. Because anything that bothers you and makes you angry and distresses you emotionally is something that is going to distract you from your life purpose as you have established it for yourself in terms of using your creative energies. And inasmuch as it does that, it has yanked your chain, and that chain, my friend, is connected to something deep inside yourself, in the fabric of your being, because when you are upset, your whole gut gets into the act. So what is bothering you? Why does it bother you? Well, you may have ideas about here you're supposed to be compassionate and sympathetic with everything. So if something bad happens to someone or a group of someone's, you need to be upset about it too. Okay. But inasmuch as it distracts you from your life purpose, don't allow it. Putting emotional energy into stuff that happens out on the periphery of your awareness is putting your emotional energy away from the center. And this is how the system, as it is contrived, keeps you from doing what you want to do, being what you want to be, or having what you want to have. It prevents you from being inner directed. And you have to be inner directed, particularly at the start. And while you're being inner directed, you will realize too that there are hooks inside of you that your emotions respond to. You're reactive about it. And any place like this is something in your shadow. This is something down in your subconscious that elicits an emotional reaction without reference to your self-conscious mind. So the stuff that elicits an emotional reaction is something that needs to be looked at by you closely. Because what you have there in that territory and turf, which is your personal subconscious, is you have a toxic waste site. And here's this toxic waste site. It's a bit of a junkyard, let's say, and it's fenced so people don't go running through there and setting you off. But inside there's a certain amount of life energy tied up, and it's on alert. And I call that your junkyard dog, or your young yard dog if you're a youngian. And as soon as anything wanders too near the periphery of the fence, this thing sets up a ruckus, sounding the alarm. Sounding the alarm because this is something that is just a little too close to home. It's a little too close to your inner issues, and you are reactive to everything about that. So in the alchemical work, which is a little more advanced than just your basic starting to become a creator in your own life, you get down to picking this stuff up and starting to sort out what's in the junkyard and figure out where it all came from. Some of it, all of it is trauma of one sort or another. And it goes back maybe to experiences in this life, certainly, and possibly to experiences in other lives, because all of that record is there in the subconscious. This is one of the places Andrew's going, where he consults the Akashic records. But you can take this in hand and look at the emotion engendered and try to let in your imagination arise the scenarios that you yourself have gone through that brought this about. And what brings it into your awareness now, and what alarms and upsets you about it. Because I guarantee you things are alarming and upsetting in the world today, and they will set you off. They're that way on purpose, to keep you out of the center. So determine now not to let the stuff that happens out on the screen around your existence, where reality is projected from the center of your being. Don't let the stuff going on out there in the movie throw you. Your part in the movie comes from within your heart. And it comes from putting your energy in one place and taking steps along that path, which is your path. Your spiritual path starts with creating the life you want. And once you start doing that and start seeing results, and the cycle starts feeding back for you, and a next step emerges, and a next step, it's the most incredible thing. You start to realize that the almighty creator of the universe is on your team. It's the most incredible feeling you'll ever have. We'll be back since it's break time. Don't pay too much attention to those horrible messages. This is Laura Lee Solomon coming to you with Charting Your Course. And the technology that I use primarily in charting my course has been the tarot. The tarot is an extraordinary technology for repatterning the energy in your subconscious mind. All of those little toxic dump sites that exist in your subconscious, which very likely over the last 3 or 4 years, due to ongoing astrological factors, have been triggered abundantly, and you know what they are and where they live. You know everything that pisses you off. You've got a long list. Tarot helps you to equilibrate and bring into an integrated balance within your being those patterned energies that cause so much disharmony and distress in your personal experience. Unless you are already established in an abundant life and can willingly share your resources without limiting yourself with others, your primary focus has to get to the place where you have the resource base to put out your hand to others. And this is another mistake so many people in the spiritual path, as they believe themselves to be, want to make a mistake, and that is that you have to give everything you have when you have nothing left. If you run yourself into exhaustion, then there is you and the other person fallen on the ground in the mud. So the first step is to build yourself a life from which you can stand in a place of security and move forward in extending your help to others. The blind can't lead the blind, and the person who has nothing can't give much in the way of practical help. They can cheer you on, and that's about it. So don't work at that level. It's okay to cheer people on, but it isn't very helpful, really. In the final analysis, the help that really counts is when you have the extra capacity to spare that you can actually give help. If you have something to give, you are more valuable to the whole of society around you than you are at ground zero. And that's why you have to start. That's why everything is built up from the center of individuals. And I want to say that using the tarot is a way to deal with the anger and the frustration and the problems you experience in life, because it talks to the subconscious in pictures. And it speaks to the subconscious in not only its own language, but in carefully constructed symbols that put things in line with the universal order. And the universal order is something established and operative throughout all the kingdoms of nature. It isn't something that is imposed by law or economics or any kind of social structure. It just is. And what the one life force moving all creation is trying to achieve at any one point can either be helped or hindered or impacted not at all by you yourself. You want to get yourself in a place where you're part of the universal flow. You're working with a much higher energy level and engaging in a much more centered way with everything from that perspective. And this is the primary purpose of our tarot practice. We in BOTA look at the tarot keys in collective and individually for a practice period each day. And working with any one of the keys, just examining it and thinking about what its respective symbolism means, it doesn't seem to do a whole lot to you at any one time. But over time, the changes are profound, and you become a much more effective conduit of the life force through your being than you were without this. The rich symbolism and the construction of tarot make it one of the best instruments for true occult education. That is, for drawing out the wisdom hidden within you. The tarot keys do not put something into your consciousness. They call forth what is already there and help you to repattern that energy. The practical instruction offered in organizations like Builders of the Atom helps a person to develop, first, a profound grasp of the meanings of these keys, and therefore a grasp of the symbolic language, so you can understand what it means when you dream. What your dreams mean is important guidance because it arises from the unconscious with your rational self out of the way. Sometimes we have experiences in life that are like a dream state while you're awake. And waking dreams, odd incidents that require you to think about them, they may be interpreted in just the same way. But knowing the symbolic language of the subconscious is a critical point to being able to read your own course and move ahead in life and become a more competent center of expression for the primal will to good. No student really ever exhausts the possibilities of the extraordinary symbolic alphabet of the tarot. But there is a definite manner in which we approach the study of the tarot keys, just as there are tunnels that lead into the heart of the mind of a mind. There are passageways that lead into the heart of your mind. And in the study of tarot, they give you a view of the territory, a knowledge of the language, and with these tools, you become not so much a believer as a scientist, because the occult becomes an experimental process. You really can make experiments that work spectacularly and experiments that don't work so well, but it becomes yours to experiment with. You can see your psychology unfold and expand when you try something that works. And you can see your consciousness fold in on itself a little bit and not do so well when you're dealing with something that doesn't work. And you become an experimenter, a scientist of the mind, a practical, spiritual psychologist. So in looking at the Western occult tradition, I did mention it has 4 branches. Tarot is one, and tarot is extraordinary. It's a wonderful place to start. Not reading the cards or telling fortunes, but looking at the cards and coming to understand what each one means, what the symbology is about. And I speak to that and have spoken of it and will again on my show, but certainly there are resources in the public domain for looking at tarot and thinking about tarot and what it means. I know there are books available. One of them is Paul Foster Case's The Tarot, that speaks in some detail about the symbolic content of the Trumps Major. I actually have a copy of it here on my desk. But the other branches, Kabbalah, the whole doctrines associated with the Tree of Life and the Hebrew letters, because Hebrew is an ancient sacred language. And just like Sanskrit, it has in it implications of things that unfold if you understand how to work with it. The Hebrew Kabbalah works with the idea of gematria, which is not quite the same thing as numerology. In ancient times, before the Arabic numerals made their way into Western civilization, languages used some of their alphabetic letters as numbers. Your clearest example of this that most people have encountered in school and still see on clocks is Roman numerals. Roman numerals aren't really numbers, except they are letters of the Roman alphabet that stand in the place of numbers. And so the Hebrew has its numeric evaluations, and words, therefore, in classical Hebrew, tend to look like numbers. And words whose numeration amounts to the same number when they are summed have meanings that are related. That doesn't mean they mean the same thing. It means the meanings are related. They can be opposites. They can relate to one another in terms of one term throws light on the other term in its meanings. But the relationships between various terms as they elucidate one another and expand on one another's meaning, that whole science is called gematria. And in the classical Kabbalistic tradition, the Hebrew rabbis would look at the biblical text not in terms of the words it said, but the meanings that were represented in terms of numbers and symbology. And this way of looking at the biblical text requires you to be looking at the Hebrew. So there's various levels of looking at biblical text, and only one is the Bible stories with which we are familiar, and some of us are perfectly willing to dismiss having come up in that tradition and not maybe having gotten much good of it. But the Kabbalistic instruction is very worth its weight as well. Alchemy is about changing the states of your mind by disassembling them, taking them apart, seeing what's fed into them, what life experiences, what past life experiences, and discovering some of what those are about and transmuting that by an act of will into a different state of energy. So you are not expressing the negative end of that anymore, the reactivity and volatility of unhealed trauma. Now, the practical side of alchemy works with materials and using conscious states to change materials. It becomes very much a yoga practice in that it requires meditation and concentration and focus in order to get the alchemical results you're after in terms of practical outer world making elixirs and whatnot alchemy. But that too is an avenue worth exploring. But another very useful and practical tool right from the get-go is astrology. Astrology is part of the Western occult tradition in the same way that the Kabbalah is. Every one of the tarot keys has an astrological correspondence, be it a sign of the zodiac or one of the astrological planets. They all relate to the tarot keys. For instance, key 4 that we laid out in the first row of the tarot tableau is the quality of reason. It is the Hebrew letter He. It is the color red. It is the note of C, the C natural in the regular scale, and it is also the planet Mars. It is about the self-will as it is aligned with the cosmic will, or misaligned, but it is in any way an act of reason and pursuing things on a reasonable basis and taking the volatile emotions and transforming them by an act of reason and will into something more constructive than just, say, rioting in D.C. and ripping up the Congressional building. There are positive and productive things to do with this energy. It isn't just idle destruction. Although people who are engaging in that expression think they're doing something about the problem. They aren't doing anything to create a solution. Take it for what it's worth. The revolution starts at the heart of every single one of us. And it has to do with becoming more than we are as natural man. Does this mean we become more than human? Not really. It means that we become more like God, more like the ideal we were created to be. And in that sense, saved in the sense of actual spiritual salvation, which isn't a matter of faith, it's a matter of being. Astrology, however. I was listening to a presentation this last week on predictive astrology. And there is an astrologer whose work I like to follow, at least in as much as he posts all his stuff on YouTube, is Rick Levine, who lives in California and holds forth on the last Wednesday of every month at a coffee shop. And he spends about an hour on a presentation of what to look for in the month ahead. As contrasted with that young man who calls himself the Leo King and presents his stuff like he's a rock star in about 15 or 20 minutes, Rick's presentation takes about an hour. And he shows you the chart. And he moves the chart and the planets in the chart through time, progresses it so in his software, and talks about the changes you're seeing and how this is going to impact everybody, including you. So what he was talking about for August is this tremendously energetic, dynamic, and volatile aspect, a square. I erroneously called it a quincunx on my show, between Saturn and Neptune. And this particular aspect is causing a really dissonant state between people's ideals and dreams and their sense of what is. And it's a very unhealed state. And I want to tell you that at the center of this cognitive space each one of us lives in, the force that gives rise to structure, Saturn, is actually the Divine Mother. Because it's structuring and it limits the one force and causes it to take specific forms, it is also equivalent with, in the religious tradition, Satan. But this is conditions as they are around you, and there's something we each have to take in hand and overcome and change as a conscious creative act, or a series of conscious creative acts, ongoing, in order to overcome it. But once we overcome it, the fact that structure exists and persists for a while becomes a very maternal and supportive quality. It's not something you'd be willing to dispense with, but you do want it to be able to change and flow in an orderly way. That change and flowing, particularly as regards ideals becoming manifesting the ideal instead of what is. This is what's at dissonance in the astrological arrangement of the present sky. And at the center of our cognitive space, they need to be together. We need the ability to break down structure without fear and flow into a new structure without a lot of trauma happening. The way things are configured in the sky right now is pretty much inciting everybody to a state of alarm as boundaries they considered hard and fast and relied on to be there are kind of melting away. And the fear factor. Fear is just tremendously degrading to spiritual effort. Overcoming fear is, I think, the greatest gift that tarot will give you over time, as your subconscious is transmuted by these chosen images, chosen and carefully composed. I want to say the tarot first came into being in the vicinity of the 1200s, some of the earliest tarot decks. And the tradition has it that the first decks to come into popular circulation were first composed by a group of adepts meeting in Fez, Morocco, according to the tradition as I was taught it, after the destruction of the great library at Alexandria. Most of the folks who were working with the traditional knowledge focused on Alexandria, and when that was destroyed, they changed headquarters and reassembled at Fez. And there was a general gathering on a worldwide basis as to how the knowledge on which life and civilization depended on Earth would be preserved over time. And it came out of the ideas inherent in the Chinese way of communication. In their writing, their classical writing anyway, which was images that were refined to have specific kinds of meaning, and composite images, simplified images, that were changed into words, so that you had a picture that bore meaning and could be expressed as a word. And what it amounted to was a language that anyone could read the meaning of once they'd studied the array of characters that were available, many thousands ultimately, regardless of phonetic language, because the meaning was in the picture, not the sounds. Tarot was built that way. The meaning is in the picture, not the sounds. So we use it as a tool to convey meaning to the subconscious mind. It's a book written in the subconscious language, and it tends to help us to rectify in our own minds energies that may be quite at dissonance in the world around us. One reason to use tarot is its ability to pattern energy in the subconscious, using these carefully contrived, symbolically accurate representations. That's why I'm fussy about the tarot I use. The Rider-Waite deck is good, but I think the BOTA deck is a little bit less obscure in its mythological and image-bearing references. The subconscious is full of vital and dynamic imagery. That's its mode of thought. And sometimes when the veil is pulled back and you get a load of what's in the subconscious, it can be quite frightening. Carl Jung went through a period like that during the time frame of World War II. Between about 1913, 1912, and 1917 or so, he was in a state where all this imagery was coming up in his mind. And rather than declare himself insane or going psychotic or having schizophrenia, he confined it to certain times each day, and he sat down and he practiced with it. And the practice was the induction of these images, and he captured them in art and wrote about them in language in a journals. But he really did feel like he was going insane. And it happens that way sometimes when the subconscious starts to erupt into conscious awareness. And it does when its contents are under pressure and when you have been building an outer structure that can cope with it. And Jung had that. He had the outer structure that could cope with it, and he used his journal as a place to capture the imagery. And he shut it down and quit paying attention to it and went on with his daily life when he needed to focus on other things. But early in the day and late in the day, he took the time to practice, and he evoked the imagery, and he let it flow, and he captured it. And it's now available in a book that is pretty much the holy grail for all Jungians. It's the Red Book. And the Red Book has been published, these last, I'd say, maybe 7 or 8 years at this point. It's been available. You can buy copies of it. It'll set you back plenty to do that. But my current ambition is to get my mitts on it. He's a really outstanding exemplar of how this kind of material was handled. But I will tell you, too, that C.G. Jung was very much into the Western occult tradition. He looked at Kabbalah and tarot, and he looked at alchemy in great detail and used it in his life. He was an occultist and a psychologist. And everything that emerged during those years became the basis of his later work. For he talked about using the conscious mind in ways that most people didn't bother using it, to apprehend the subconscious process and work with it. It's a bit like riding a tiger. And you can either deal with it in an unconscious way and be part of the madness, or you can get conscious and centered within yourself. The tradition I study lets you do that and slowly opens your awareness further and further until you are apprehending the perceptions of the subconscious. You are apprehending the symbology that arises in your own mind. You can see the symbology taking place all around you, not just in symbols and logos corporations use, but in the meaning of the events that are unfolding in your life. Hey, we're back, and I'd like to remind you all that this is Revolution Radio, listener-supported station on the internet, one of the largest going, and we invite you to take part in the process of being Revolution Radio and supporting the operations of the station with your presence and your financial energy. That being said, please stop by freedomslips.com and look over the website. You might find some opportunities there that are of interest to you. I would also like to point people who are listening to this show in particular to andrewbartzis.com, where he is gearing up for his event, Living the Mystical Life Daily, and inviting you to sign up for 2 free videos on that very subject. I believe it takes an email address. But if you've got an email address, that works just fine, and it will bring you where you want to go, getting more information about Andrew's practices and event. So I was talking about astrology and how it can show you what's going on with the shape of space and time in your present experience, and what kind of forces will be impacting on all of us generally. And Rick Levine does a very good presentation in that regard. You can learn a lot of predictive astrology just watching him work. But there's a definite manner in which we approach the study of these 4 branches, and we start, in our tradition, with the symbology of the tarot by making the elements of the esoteric language of symbols part of our vocabulary. And we do this by spending some time with a chosen tarot key every day. You may read about that tarot key in different sources. Paul Case's book. There are others by folks in the tradition. You can read Golden Dawn stuff, anything that talks about the keys in themselves, and spending time then looking at that tarot key, looking at the color associated with that tarot key, sounding the note associated with that tarot key, because sound is vibration. Through sound, the world stands, it is said, and attuning to the frequency of that particular letter of the Hebrew alphabet and set of symbols in the tarot key. As the results of this practice, spending 15 minutes or so a day with a tarot key, doing it for about a week or maybe 2 before moving on to the next one, this will start to show results in your lives that will be really quite agreeable. You'll find yourself better able to concentrate. Your perceptions will be keener. You will deepen and broaden your comprehension of yourself and on the meaning of your various experiences. You will start to be able to see more clearly into situations as they arise. Just looking at written material is almost useless. Just listening to words is a little bit better, but not a lot. You need to devote a certain period of every day to the practices of the spiritual life. As Andrew is talking about in Living the Spiritual Life Daily, if you are in the Western occult tradition, you start your day with tarot. You're looking at and thinking about a tarot key. You take the time for the practice because there's no such thing as a lack of time for this work. This is absurd when it is, after all, the fundamental upon which your ongoing life is based. Your spiritual growth is more worthy of consideration than anything else. You prove this every day of your life by seeking continually for greater enlightenment. You guys read books, you talk to people, you attend lectures and meetings, yet 15 minutes a day devoted to tarot study every day can promote your growth more than hours of these other activities. The one part of your day that is not to be dispensed with is working with tarot. And the first practical exercise that is offered in the instruction of BOTA is actually a look at the tree of life and a series of affirmative statements called the pattern on the trestle board, or the master pattern, as it's called in the same organization's work in Europe. People call it the master pattern. This is something that you can find written, but if there isn't a copy around, by all means, stop over on the web to bota.org and look at the resources page. It's there with a full color picture of the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree, the actual glyph that is derived from the flower of life, and the affirmative statements of it. And this is used with a very, very powerful meditative sequence in which you are imagining yourself as standing in the midst of the tree of life, with it around you. You are in the place of the central column on the tree, with the central sphere, the yellow one labeled beauty, Tifereth, the sixth sephira, at about the place of your heart. This means that the red and blue spheres in the picture are just above your shoulders, and your head rises into a space where there aren't any spheres. Above your head, as though it were a crown, is a triad of other spheres on the tree: the crown, wisdom, and understanding. Kether, Hokmah, and Binah. These are the supernals. They represent the God self. Whereas you, as you build the tree around you, are building the Son of God. Remembering that the sphere in the center, the bright yellow one, actually is representative of the sun as it shines in the sky. The Son of God also is at the center of your being, and building that ideal between the sun and your heart is not a bad thing. It's a very good thing when it comes to energizing you and dispelling depression. All you really have to do is think about that after a while, and that light of the sun starts to glow through your being. But it's an act of active imagination, as Jung put it, in terms of engaging in mental imagery for a specific purpose. With the first statement of the pattern, we form a crystalline sphere around our being, one that gives us lots of room for growth, as it were. It will include the whole tree of life, and it is a protective boundary. And it goes with the 0 statement on the pattern, the statement that says, all the power that ever was or will be is here now. Statement 1 about being a center of expression goes with the white sphere, crown, and so on down through the spheres of the tree of life. Statement 1 goes with the crown. Statement 2, containing the word wisdom, goes with the sephirah, or the sphere labeled wisdom. The third statement talks about understanding, which is the third sephiroth, or Binah. The fourth statement goes with the fourth sephiroth, the blue one. From the exhaustless riches of its limitless substance. This is the sphere of Jupiter, called Chesed in the Hebrew. Its opposite partner, the red sphere, is Geburah, or strength, and it goes with the idea of justice, and statement 5 goes with it. I recognize the manifestation of the undeviating justice in all the circumstances of my life. If you're saying that as an affirmation, and you have problems in your life, you know where to look for both the cause and the cure. Statement number 6 goes with that heart center, that sunshine in all things great and small. I see the beauty of the divine expression. And so on through the tree of life. Let's do the pattern on the trestle board and think about this as a way to pull the power of the very uppermost reaches of divine being. Kether, the first point, the first concentrated point of creation. Let me say that in the Kabbalistic system, we understand that God created the universe by first concentrating a point. That point we call Kether. And from that point, standing at its center, he created a space. Just like we do whenever we're going to create anything, we clear an area in our minds and start envisioning what we want in that space. So he created a space and sealed the six directions with permutations of his divine name. Those 6 directions form a cube, another glyph we call the cube of space. But as the creative process unfolds, we start with the unmanifest focus to that single point of Kether. So the tree of life actually has its root in the unmanifest. It's kind of an upside-down tree, like the Norse Yggdrasil, the roots extending into the unmanifest, and the first sprout, the crown. And as we go through the tree, we finally come to this last sphere where the statement is, the kingdom of spirit is embodied in my flesh. The kingdom is the uppermost fruit of the tree of life. It is an exalted state of creation, except for the fact that we have let it fall by letting our awareness fall into the place of duality, where we see good and evil, and not enough of the good, perhaps, and feel a lot of fear of the evil. But that kingdom can be restored by our spiritual practice and our gradual resumption of the center of seat of our being. And at that center seat, with our hands on the controls, we are aligned with, as the Son of God, as a God incarnate, as the Christ was. In fact, Paramahansa Yogananda spoke at length and frequently about the Yogi Christ of India. Christ is a title, and that title represents a spiritual attainment, which is the identity with the one self of humanity, that sun at the center, not only of the solar system, but of our own being. So in doing the pattern, we think about the tree of life and we build it around us, both as a way of pulling energy into our experience and cycling energy through our experience for expression. And this is handling energy by an active imagination, which is the only way energy is handled. But active imagination is a valid spiritual technique. And if you are one of those people who are like a rock and you do not feel energy and you do not perceive spiritual things, this is a place to start if you want to become more, because you're telling yourself these things and you're looking at these images, and doing so develops you. It expands you, it unfolds you, and it extends the range of your perception. It engages the function of your imagination therein. So how do you tell the difference, before we launch on the pattern on the trestle board, between spontaneously arising vision, which does happen, and your own acts of imagination? Most people actually can tell the difference. Imagination, as you use it in fantasy, is running your own movie in your head. It's very like that when you're doing any act of imagination, except that if you are doing active imaginal work, you're doing it for a purpose and with focused concentration. You're not doing anything else. You got a grounded state, in other words. You're here and now and doing this. So it is intrinsically more powerful, but it is using the imagination as though it were an organ of manipulation, something that would be improved upon by exercise, as it is. Vision, on the other hand, perception, unfolds spontaneously, and there doesn't seem to be a thing you can do about it except to witness what happens and try to take notes, as Carl Jung did when perception unfolded within him. He took copious notes, and he built his life upon what he learned there and then. This kind of unfolding is possible for everyone because our inherent human nature is that we are made in the image and likeness of the Most High God. So the pattern on the trestle board begins now. This is the truth about the self. All the power that ever was or will be is here now. I am a center of expression for the primal will to good, which eternally creates and sustains the universe. Through me, its unfailing wisdom takes form in thought and word, filled with understanding of its perfect law. I am guided moment by moment along the path of liberation. From the exhaustless riches of its limitless substance, I draw all things needful, both spiritual and material. I recognize the manifestation of the undeviating justice in all the circumstances of my life. In all things, great and small, I see the beauty of the divine expression. Living from that will, supported by its unfailing wisdom and understanding, mine is the victorious life. I look forward with confidence to the perfect realization of the eternal splendor of the limitless light. In thought and word and deed, I rest my life from day to day upon the sure foundation of eternal being. The kingdom of spirit is embodied in my flesh. And so it is. You know, folks who follow Andrew probably won't get into the work of BOTA or the Western occult tradition necessarily. Andrew's approach is very strongly shamanic. But the objectives of the Western occult tradition are the same as the objectives of the shamanic tradition, as the same as the objectives of the ancient mystery traditions. And it's all about elevating people from their normal workaday consciousness, as beaten down and as flattened into mundaneness as it is, and raising it to the recognition of the sacred in life and the sacredness around one, and challenging you to walk a sacred way and learn the truths of the soul based on its natural immortality. I think one of the most irritating things I've ever come across in spiritual teachings of any sort was the drivel that came forth from Whitley Strieber about the nukes at Hiroshima and Nagasaki destroying innocent souls. Now, they destroyed some lives. Many were hurt, many were killed. There was mass destruction, but the soul is not destroyed by unleashed nuclear explosions. No, not even thermonuclear explosions. At the very worst, the physical vehicle is destroyed. Perhaps also the etheric and astral vehicles. Maybe. The personal identity continues. And it is something that exists at a frequency and in a direction that is not touched by such things. What do I mean? Since I've only got a couple of minutes, and you may still have the picture of the tree of life in front of you, I want you to look at the image. Well, the tarot tableau would be better. You can see the tarot keys in greater detail. But the one I'm looking at is between kingdom and splendor. It is a picture of what's called the Last Judgment, Key 20, Judgment, and you can see it in greater detail on the tarot tableau. It has the Archangel Gabriel sounding his horn, and in response to that sound being emitted, a masculine figure, a feminine figure, and a child are rising up out of rectangular structures that might be considered sarcophagi. Those rectangular stone structures are the structures of our mundane lives. And what rises up out of them in the vertical dimension is the subconsciousness, the self-consciousness, and the union of the two, which is born of working with both the self and subconsciousness together in their proper roles. The subconscious as the massive intelligence connecting everything, and the self-consciousness as the guiding focus within it. And it brings about this child, which is the Christ child, It is your eternal self. And that eternal self, together with self and subconsciousness, arises from the mundane and experiences in a different dimension the realities of that dimension, which are based on frequencies of energy as exemplified by the sound emerging from Gabriel's trumpet. We are eternal beings. We are spiritual beings. And bringing that awareness to light in each of us is the goal of the spiritual path, wherever you may find it. May you walk in beauty, beauty before you,